The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched species evolve from primitive creatures to spacefaring civilizations. They believed they understood the universe and everything in it. They were wrong about humanity. When humans first appeared on the galactic stage, the Council dismissed them as insignificant. Earth was a small planet in an unremarkable corner of the Milky Way. The humans had only just discovered faster-than-light travel. Their ships were crude. Their weapons were laughable compared to the ancient technologies wielded by the elder races. Though a proud warrior species with scales like black diamonds called humans soft meat. The beings of pure energy who had existed since the birth of the galaxy did not even acknowledge their existence. The Council gave humanity a small sector of space and told them to stay quiet. For 50 years, humanity did exactly that. They stayed in their corner. They built their colonies. They traded peacefully with the few species willing to deal with them. They smiled at insults. They bowed their heads when the elder races passed. The galaxy forgot about them almost entirely. Ambassador Al of the Empire was the first to notice something strange. During a minor trade dispute, he had threatened a human diplomat named Sarah. He had expected her to tremble. He had expected her to beg. Instead, she had looked at him with eyes that held no fear at all. She had simply smiled and said, "We remember everything, Ambassador, every word, every action. We are very patient people." Then she had walked away. Al had laughed at the time. He stopped laughing 3 years later. The massacre of New Eden changed everything. New Eden was a human colony world at the edge of their territory. It was home to 12 million people, families, children, artists and farmers and teachers. The Empire decided they wanted the planet. It sat on top of rare minerals that powered their warships. They did not ask for permission. They did not offer to buy the minerals. They simply arrived with a fleet of 300 warships and opened fire. The colonists had no military vessels. They had no orbital defenses. They sent desperate messages to Earth begging for help, but Earth was too far away. The journey would take 3 days even at maximum speed. They knew this. They took their time. They burned the cities slowly. They hunted the survivors through the forests for sport. When they finally grew bored, they released a biological weapon that killed everything that remained. 12 million humans died screaming while the galaxy watched and did nothing. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Several species expressed mild concern. The representatives suggested that humanity should file a formal complaint. The ambassador laughed and said his people had simply claimed what they deserved. The human representative, an old man named Admiral James Wright, sat in silence throughout the entire proceeding. When asked if he wished to speak, he simply shook his head. When asked what humanity intended to do, he said only 5 words: "We will handle this ourselves." Then he left. Many in the council took this as acceptance of defeat. For 6 months, nothing happened. The Empire celebrated their easy victory. They stripped New Eden of its resources. They built monuments to their conquest. Emperor declared himself the greatest warrior in history. He commissioned songs about how humanity had cowered before his might. The galaxy returned to normal. Some species even forgot that New Eden had ever existed. Then the silence began. It started small. A cargo ship disappeared near the border of human space, then another, then a patrol vessel, then an entire supply convoy. No distress signals, no wreckage, no bodies, just empty space where ships had once been. The sent investigation teams. The investigation teams also vanished. They sent warships. The warships disappeared too. Over 3 months, 47 vessels simply ceased to exist. No one saw what happened to them. No one survived to tell stories. Emperor was furious. He demanded answers from his admirals. They had none. He demanded action from the Galactic Council. The human representative, Admiral Wright, attended the session. When asked if humanity was responsible for the disappearances, he said nothing. He simply stared at the ambassador with those patient, unblinking eyes. The silence stretched for 5 full minutes. Then he stood and left without speaking a single word. Fear began to spread through the fleet. Soldiers who had laughed at humans now whispered about ghosts in the darkness between stars. Captains refused assignments near human space. Admirals slept with weapons beside their beds. The Emperor called them cowards and ordered a massive fleet assembled. 2,000 warships gathered at the edge of human territory. It was the largest military force they had ever deployed. They would crush these insignificant humans once and for all. Fleet jumped into human space on a bright morning by Earth's calendar. They expected resistance. They expected a battle. They found nothing. Human space was completely empty. Every colony had been evacuated. Every station had been abandoned. Every ship had disappeared. They searched for 3 days. They found no trace of humanity anywhere. It was as if an entire species had simply vanished from existence. Some admirals suggested that humans had fled in terror. Others were not so certain. The silence felt wrong somehow. It felt like the quiet before a terrible storm. On the 4th day, the storm arrived. It began with the lights. Every ship in the fleet lost power simultaneously. Engines died. Weapons went offline. Life support flickered and failed. 2,000 warships drifted helplessly in the cold void of space. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the messages began to appear on every screen on every ship. The messages contained no words. They contained only images. Images of New Eden. Images of burning cities. Images of dead children. Images of soldiers laughing as they hunted fleeing civilians. The messages played on loop while they watched in growing horror. Then the human ships arrived. They came from everywhere at once, from behind asteroids, from within gas clouds, from places where sensors had detected nothing. They realized with growing terror that the humans had been watching them the entire time. Every move they had made had been observed. Every word they had spoken had been recorded. Humanity had not been hiding in fear. They had been waiting and planning and preparing with a patience that they could not comprehend. The human fleet was different from anything the galaxy had seen before. Their ships were black as night and silent as death. They moved without visible engines. They communicated without detectable signals. They struck without warning and killed without mercy. They tried to fight back. Their weapons would not fire. They tried to run. Their engines would not start. They tried to surrender. No one answered their calls. The battle lasted 6 hours. It was not really a battle. It was an execution. The human ships moved through the fleet like wolves through a flock of sheep. They disabled vessels one by one. They cut through hulls with weapons that made no sound. They vented crews into space without hesitation. They recorded everything. They wanted the galaxy to see. They wanted everyone to understand what happened when humanity chose silence over mercy. Of the 2,000 warships, only one was allowed to escape. It was the flagship of Admiral Hal, the commander who had led the assault on New Eden. His crew was left alive and his engines were restored. But before they fled, the humans sent one final message. It was a video. It showed Admiral Hal's daughter, safe and unharmed in a human facility. She had been captured months ago from her school on the. No one had even known she was missing. The message ended with 2 simple sentences. We could have killed her. We still might. The surviving told their story. It spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The elder races finally began to pay attention. They studied the recordings from the battle. They analyzed the technology that humanity had somehow developed in secret. They calculated how long it would take for humans to build more ships like those black ghosts. The numbers they arrived at were terrifying. The Galactic Council demanded an explanation. They summoned Admiral Wright and ordered him to justify humanity's actions. He arrived alone and stood before the assembled representatives of 1,000 species. They shouted questions at him. They made threats. They demanded answers. He waited until they grew tired of their own voices. Then he spoke. His words were soft and calm. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats. He simply explained. Humanity had asked for peace. They had been given war. Humanity had asked for justice. They had been given silence. Humanity had asked for mercy for their children. They had been given none. So humanity had made a choice. They would no longer ask for anything. They would no longer explain themselves. They would no longer show the mercy that had been to them. From this moment forward, any species that harmed human civilians would cease to exist. There would be no warnings. There would be no negotiations. There would only be silence and then oblivion. The council sat in stunned disbelief. The representative demanded to know if this was a declaration of war. Admiral Wright shook his head slowly. War implied two sides fighting. This would not be war. This would be extinction. He turned and walked toward the door. The ambassador jumped to his feet and shouted that the Empire would never bow to human threats. Admiral Wright stopped at the door. He turned back and looked at the ambassador with those patient, terrible eyes. He said nothing. He simply held up a small device and pressed a button. Every screen in the council chamber displayed the same image. It was burning. While the council had been meeting, while the emperor had been hiding in his palace, human ships had arrived at Prime. They had not attacked the planet. They had not killed anyone. They had simply destroyed every satellite, every orbital station, every ship in the system. Then they had left. The Empire was now completely cut off from the galaxy. Their economy would collapse within weeks. Their civilization would fall within months, and the humans had not fired a single shot at a civilian target. The message was clear. Humanity could have killed billions. They had chosen not to, this time. Admiral Wright left the council chamber without another word. No one tried to stop him. No one dared to speak. The galaxy that had laughed at humanity for 50 years now understood the truth. Humans were not weak. Humans were not soft. Humans were simply patient. They remembered every insult. They recorded every crime. And when they finally chose to act, they did so with a cold efficiency that made the warrior races of the galaxy look like children playing with toys. In the years that followed, peace spread across the galaxy faster than it ever had before. Species that had warred for suddenly found reasons to negotiate. Empires that had bullied smaller civilizations suddenly became generous trading partners. And whenever a diplomat asked why this change had occurred, the answer was always the same. No one wanted to be next. No one wanted to face the silence. Humanity never apologized for what they had done. They never explained their methods. They never revealed how they had developed technology that surpassed anything the elder races possessed. They simply returned to their corner of the galaxy and continued building their civilization. They traded peacefully. They smiled politely. They bowed their heads when the elder races passed. But the elder races no longer saw soft meat when they looked at humans. They saw something far more terrifying. They saw a species that would wait centuries for revenge. They saw a species that valued their children more than their own survival. They saw a species that chose silence over mercy. And the galaxy bowed in fear.